vacancy in 4E, Miss Summerhill condominium. There's someone passed out. I don't know. A girl was hysterical in here. She just ran over. Her husband is passed out.
Do you know why he's passed out there, man?
He's on the way. Do you know why he's passed out? No, we don't know.
1990, and I got a call early in the morning that there had been a murder. I had to go to the condo complex where the Smarts lived and where the crime had been committed. The word was it was probably a botched robbery or something, and there was really no reason at the time to think it was anything else. And a few days after the crime, I called Pam at her mother's house, and she invited me over to interview her. I remember she was sitting there on the couch, and the windows had big lights, and behind her she was surrounded by the flowers.
Because there was some initial thoughts that maybe this was a drug deal that went bad, and she didn't hesitate to talk about how her husband wasn't into drugs and how she was defending his honor. And there was a feeling that she actually enjoyed the attention she was getting being the widow on TV.
It is now 7 days since the murder. This would have been their one-year wedding anniversary, she tells me. Throughout the lengthy interview, Pamela is composed.
Sometimes I ask myself, I can't figure out where the strength is coming from.
As we sit talking, Pamela's dog, Halen, named after the rock group Van Halen, snuggles up to her. Luckily, nothing happened to him, she says. He was locked in the basement when I found Gregg murdered.
She's dressed beautifully, full-on makeup. She looks hot, like she was going to a party. She told me that she had wanted to be a television news reporter. She says, it's been just about 1 year exactly since Gregg and I were married. I've got the top layer of our wedding cake. Wouldn't it be good if you got a shot of me, looking at it? Wouldn't that be a poignant moment in your story?
Hi, this is True Crime Brewery, and I'm Jill.
And I'm Dick. Happy Tuesday, everyone.
And today's episode is Deadly Lessons, the plot to kill Gregg Smart.
I remember that case.
Yep, 1990.
Yes.
1990. Pam Smart, actually, she was born Pamela Ann Wohas. Did you know that?
Did not.
And that was on August 16th of 1967 in Coral Gables, Florida. And she was living with her husband Gregg Smart in Derry, New Hampshire in 1990. And that's when she was arrested for conspiring with her 15-year-old lover to kill Gregg. This was a huge story that quickly gained national media attention. It's a story with all the ingredients of a Hollywood drama. It has forbidden love, exploitation, sex, betrayal, and murder.
A great story.
Yep. Now, Pam was later convicted of being an accomplice to first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and witness tampering. And she's serving a life sentence as we speak. So Dick and I are really excited to discuss this case, very notorious, well-known case nationally, but here in New England it's probably the most infamous murder in the past 50 years.
It probably is. I mean, the Stewart murder, when he killed his wife and unborn child and then committed suicide, that was pretty famous too.
Yeah, so it's right up there.
But this is one of the biggies.
Yeah, I thought so. And what did you decide to have for a beer with this big story? Hopefully a big beer.
It is a big beer. It's a New Hampshire murder. So, of course, we're looking at a New Hampshire beer.
Right, right.
And one of the venerable New Hampshire breweries is Smutty Nose Brewing of Hampton in New Hampshire.
Wow, that's right there. Right where the Winnicott School is.
Right there.
Yep.
Pretty close. So I picked their Baltic Porter, Smutty Nose Baltic Porter. So just a little background on this, and first talk about a porter.
Okay.
Porter is said to have been a popular beer with transportation workers of central London in the 1700s, hence the name porter.
Why is that? Why would they have a special beer that they liked?
They just liked this dark, heavy beer.
Okay.
It originally was a blend of 3 different styles of beer. An old ale, which was either stale or soured, a new ale, which could be brown or pale, and a weak ale, also called a mild ale. So the cool thing about a porter, it was the first truly engineered beer, in that it was a blend of 3 different beers to produce something that the masses would like.
Wow, okay. That's neat.
Now today, porters are usually brewed using a pale malt base with the addition of black malt or chocolate malt or smoked brown malt. And the hop bitterness is usually fairly moderate. It's not a particularly hoppy beer. So then we come to a Baltic porter, which is basically a stronger, more robust version of a porter. So on to Smutty Nose's take on a Baltic porter. A very dark, dark black beer, impenetrable by light. A nice thick coffee-colored head with lacing that lasted all the way down to the bottom of the glass.
Wow, that's special.
So it looked good.
Yeah, okay.
A nice coffee aroma, some sweet fruit, a good coffee taste. The fruit turned out to be more in like a dark fruit, raisin, plum, something like that. Very creamy mouthfeel. You can notice the alcohol, but it doesn't get in the way of being an enjoyable beer to drink.
Okay.
So try that one.
That sounds good. Let's open it up. Very good, Dickie. So let's grab our glasses and slide on down to the quiet end of the bar.
Let's do that. I'm noticing that this place is pretty dead tonight, so there's all sorts of quiet ends.
Yeah, usually Tuesday nights are quiet, so that's good.
This is even more quiet.
Yeah.
But let's go sit.
Okay.
Talk about the case.
All right. So, Deadly Lessons. This is about the plot to kill Gregg Smart. Now, Pam Smart was the supposed mastermind of Gregg Smart's murder. So I'd like to go over what I know about her early years and the years when Pam and Greg were together as well. Like I said in the introduction, Pam was born in Florida. She's the second of 3 children in her family. She has a sister, Elizabeth, who's 6 years older, and a brother, John, who's 3 years younger than she is. Her father worked as a commercial airline pilot, while her mother was a part-time legal secretary, so middle-class life, middle child in the family. Now, when Pam was in elementary school, she moved with her family to Windham, New Hampshire, and she went to high school at Pinkerton Academy in Derry, and she was a cheerleader there, actually.
Rah, rah.
Yep. So after high school, Pam went to college at Florida State University, and she graduated with honors with a communications degree in 1988.
She's a pretty intelligent woman.
She did well in school.
Didn't she graduate college in 3 years or something like that?
She did, yeah.
Yeah. And she was a great student in high school.
Yeah, smart, ambitious.
Right.
Yeah. During college, she combined her passion for heavy metal music with her career aspirations. And she hosted a one-night-a-week radio show at WVFS, and she called it Metal Madness, and she used the alias the Maiden of Metal. So Pam and Greg, they met at a 1986 New Year's Eve party, and then they married in 1989. Greg and Pam both loved heavy metal music. When Greg bought a Shih Tzu puppy for Pam, she named the puppy Halen after her favorite group, Van Halen.
Well, what else would you name him?
Right. So only 7 months into the marriage, there were already problems. Greg began to grow up a little bit more than Pam. He became more conservative. He was working in the same company with his father as an insurance salesman, and he kind of created a whole new image of himself. He dressed more conservatively. He cut off his long hair, which Pam was said to have really loved, and he was looking more like a businessman than the rock star that Pam had first set her eyes on when they met back in 1986.
Yeah, but Pam wasn't exactly a movie star or anything at this time. She's working in Winnicott High School as like, what, a media director or something?
Yep.
So, I mean, it sounded like both of them were settling into a fairly middle-class existence.
I think so, yeah. But maybe that wasn't quite what she wanted.
I guess
or
not.
What she'd expected things to be.
So what sorts of things happened in the marriage?
Well, Greg confessed to Pam around Christmas time that he'd had an affair. And Greg's family and friends said that Greg still loved her very much. He was planning a party for their first anniversary, and he was also planning a trip for 2 of them to Florida, because Pam loved to lay in the sun and on the beach.
So they were just married a few months, and he's already screwing around.
Well, it was supposedly a one-night stand.
Well, of course.
Sure. But Pam was also pursuing her career in broadcasting, and she didn't get the job that she wanted at the TV station, so she did get hired, though, like you said, as a media services director, with the school board in Hampton, New Hampshire. She saw this job as a stepping stone to what she really wanted for a career. And her job was actually to distribute and produce educational videos for use in the school district. Now, she also volunteered as an adult facilitator with a local drug awareness program, and that was called Project Self-Esteem. And all freshmen at Winnicott High School were expected to participate. And the kids really looked up to Pam. She told them stories of how she'd gone to concerts, she met Eddie Van Halen, and things they'd done backstage, and she was kind of more like one of the kids than an adult role model.
Well, yeah. I mean, she was, 21 years old or something like
22.
that? 22. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, of course.
Well, of course, but I think that some 22-year-olds could keep that distance and be the adult.
They should be able to.
Yes.
I mean, there are boundaries.
Right, exactly. I don't think that Pam stuck within the boundaries at all.
No. Not from everything we've read about and seen.
No. So this is how Pam met Billy Flynn. He was one of the teenagers working on the project, and he really became smitten with Pam, had a huge crush on her. And he was said to have visited her office pretty much daily on school days because her office was right across the parking lot from the Winnicott High School. So it was in the fall of 1989 that Pam and Billy first met, and around this time, Gregg had had the affair, and he encouraged Pam to spend more time with the young people that she'd befriended at Winnicott. And Pam was only a few years older, like you said, and she became attracted to Billy right away, because Billy was kind of cute. He was 150 pounds, 5'11". He had these big, round, kind of young Paul McCartney eyes with dark shoulder-length hair. And he had an earring, which, that was the thing in 1990. We're right out of the 80s there. And he wore a black leather jacket. He played the guitar, and he was just cute, and he appealed to her.
Well,
so this is a bad sign.
See, here she is, a teacher, and being attracted to a 15-year-old freshman.
Yeah, that's not good.
Boy, I tell you.
Yeah. Billy ran with kind of a tough crowd, too. He was from Seabrook, and I know what Seabrook's like. Seabrook is pretty rough for the most part.
Seabrook is. It has a reputation as being a pretty rough and tumble place.
Yeah, people there don't have a lot of money, and some of the kids are on their own a lot. And he had these friends who were even tougher than he was, Pete Randall and J.R. Lattime. But they were known as being very helpful in the neighborhood. They kind of ran a little business where they would run errands and shovel snow and stuff for people. And if people were elderly and didn't have a lot of money, they'd sometimes do that stuff for free. So they weren't bad kids necessarily. And Billy was pretty sensitive and seemed to care about things. So nobody would really have suspected Billy Flynn to get involved in anything untoward, anything illegal, although some of his friends had already gotten in trouble.
Well, Pam said in a later interview, I thought he was a good kid. He was easy to talk to, friendly.
Mm-hmm.
He liked the same music I liked. He played the guitar.
Yep.
So those are okay. However, she became overly friendly with Billy and the other kids.
She did, yeah, totally.
And she had a student intern, Cecilia Pierce, who became her best friend.
Right.
So it's Pam and Cecilia and Billy and the two other guys.
Pretty much, yeah.
So the things started heating up a little bit. In March of 1990.
Mm-hmm. That's 2 months before the murder.
2 months before the murder.
Yep.
Pam invited Billy Flynn and Cecilia Pierce to her condo to watch movies.
Right, and this is the night that Cecilia was talking about when she testified in court.
This is not a good thing.
No.
Gregg was out of the state at an insurance meeting.
Yep.
Wow. So according to Cecilia, they watched 9.5 weeks, the steamy movie with Mickey Rourke and Kim Basinger.
Yeah, very steamy.
Very steamy.
Yeah.
So Billy and Pam left Cecilia downstairs when they went up to the bedroom. They had sex for the first time. So the sexual affair between Pam and Billy began that night. And at the same time, the molestation and manipulation of Billy Flynn began. I guess you'd have to say molestation. She's in her 20s and he's 15.
Absolutely.
Sounds like statutory rape to me.
There's such a double standard. If this was a guy, we would definitely say it was molestation.
And it's definitely manipulation. We're going to find out a lot more about that.
Right. So her message to Billy was simple, it was, if you love me, you'll kill my husband. So Billy agreed that he would kill Gregg for Pam.
Yeah. Now, it didn't happen boom like that.
Happened pretty quickly from
But
what I've read, that she started saying that right off.
It didn't take much conversation or coercing to get him to agree to do it.
Yeah, they'd only slept together once or twice, and she told him, well, we can't do this anymore unless you kill my husband. So it makes you think she was planning that from the get-go.
Of course.
Yeah. So it's not like she just fell into this sexual relationship and then came up with it. It seems like it might have been premeditated.
Yes, it does. And as you said, the exploitation of Billy Flynn.
Right, right. So Billy agreed that he would kill Gregg for Pam, and there were actually 2 aborted attempts. Billy testified in the trial that Pam was furious when he didn't go through with it, and Pam told Billy that May 1st, 1990 was his last chance to do it or they were done.
Pressure.
Yeah, lots of pressure. So numerous plans were discussed between Billy, his friend JR, and his friend Pete. But they settled on the plan that was basically told to them by Pam. So what they did is they parked at a nearby shopping plaza, and Pam left the bulkhead door open, as well as the rear doors for Bill and Pete to enter the condo, so they could ransack it and stage it to look like a burglary. And she told them, hey, you can take anything you want, including the electronics and the jewelry. But she told the boys not to turn on the lights because she said, Gregg's really a wimp and he won't go in if he sees a light on. So I don't understand that.
What's
really.
that mean? He's going to assume that there's somebody in his house?
I guess so, which is not something I'd assume, but
No.
That's what she said. And she told them not to hurt the dog, Halen, to put him in the basement so he wouldn't be traumatized by seeing Gregg's death.
Well, that's so thoughtful of her.
I know. At least she's thinking about somebody besides herself there, right?
Yeah.
And then she also told them that they should use a gun because a knife is too messy. And I don't know if this is true, but I've heard it a few times that she didn't want them to get blood on her white leather couch. And she thought that with a gun it would be less messy, but I don't see how it would be less messy.
I think that's faulty thinking, right?
Maybe, but that's the least of her problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they got to find a gun.
Yes. So May 1st actually began like any other work day, of course, for Gregg Smart, because he doesn't know about any of this going on.
No, he's off to work. And
Yep.
doing
Leaves
his
to work
thing.
in the morning. Yep. And Pam would be coming home that evening. She had a school board meeting that would go late because they were talking about salaries and they were having a discussion regarding another media class that she might have been able to teach in the fall. So she knew that she wouldn't be arriving home until well after Gregg was dead. So she stopped by Billy Flynn's locker that day to let him know that the bulkhead doors were left open. And that day she also wore all of her gold chains and gold rings on each of her fingers so that when the house was robbed, she wouldn't lose any of the jewelry she really liked.
Oh, man.
So she was really covered in gold that day.
What a schemer.
I know, she's very tricky. So about 2:30 p.m., Billy called Pam to let her know that there was a snag in the plan. Another snag. That's not good.
No, he's got a deadline here.
He does. So he said they needed a ride to JR's grandmother's 1978 Chevy Yellow Impala. And that was going to be their getaway car, and that was over in Haverhill. So that's a little ways away.
Yeah, a good hour.
Yeah, but Pam agreed, and she actually went out and drove them to the car in Haverhill, and then came back to the school and worked the rest of the day and went to her meeting. So she was ready to help them.
So the 3 boys are on their way to Haverhill to pick up Grammy's car or someone's car.
Right, in Pam's car.
In Pam's car.
Yep.
And they picked up another guy to help out, a guy named Fowler.
Yeah, Ray Fowler.
Ray Fowler. Once they got the car, the plan was for Lattime and Fowler to wait in the car at the shopping plaza while Flynn and Randall entered the condo.
Sure, that was the plan.
Flynn chased the dog down, tossed him into the basement. They then ransacked the home, taking jewelry and electronics. They left a small pair of stereo speakers by the door, intending to take them when they left. And they waited in the dark for Gregg Smart to come home. Billy had a snub-nosed revolver in his waistband, a gun JR had sneaked out of his father's gun collection.
Mm-hmm.
When Gregg came in the door, Billy leapt out and grabbed him by the shoulders. The 2 boys overpowered Gregg, handed over his wallet, Pete told Gregg to give him his wedding band. He said, "No, my wife would kill me."
Yeah, that's quite a line, huh?
That is a horrible line.
Yeah.
According to his testimony, Billy said, "God forgive me," as he pulled the trigger and killed Gregg.
Now, that's according to Billy's testimony.
That's Billy's testimony.
Okay. So Billy and Pete ran out of the condo to the getaway car, and then they rode back to Seabrook with J.R. and Ray Fowler. And Pam later told Billy that while driving to Hampton, she'd seen them going the other way on the road, and she'd flicked her headlights in greeting to them. So she's just like in another world. I don't get it. She's not taking it seriously, really.
No.
So it makes you think she's a sociopath. And I know you don't want to get into all that, but it sure seems that way.
You know, enough of the murders we discuss involve sociopaths, so it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, probably more often than not.
Right.
Yeah, right. So meanwhile, 24-year-old Gregg, he was lying in a pool of blood in his dark, ransacked condo for hours before Pam came home and found him lying there. And it was at 10:10 p.m. that night that Pam pulled up in the driveway and she parked in the garage. She climbed the few steps to the front porch of her condo and just took one step inside and turned on the foyer light. And that's when she screamed for help and went running outside, and a neighbor called 911. So she told the neighbor, "My husband's hurt. He's on the floor. I don't know what's wrong with him."
She didn't see the blood?
Well, she did, but she didn't know if he'd been hit in the head. There was a candlestick lying nearby.
Okay.
So she didn't know if it was a gunshot, supposedly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, wink, wink. But it was Pam Smart's demeanor as the grieving widow that really didn't ring true with investigators. So she insisted on an immediate interview, according to Detective Daniel Pelletier. He said that he took her to the police department right away because she really wanted to talk. And Pam told the detectives, "This looks like a botched robbery to me," as if she's an expert or something.
Yeah.
And she said, "The first thing I saw was that the speakers were off their stands." And what came to Pelletier in his mind was, well, what about her husband? First thing she saw was the speakers.
Right.
Who would even notice that if your husband's lying dead before you?
You're looking at your husband in a pool of blood.
And you're noticing
and
that.
Well, the speakers are off place.
Yeah, right. So she referred to Gregg also as the body instead of my husband, which that also really raised some eyebrows in the police department. And she never seemed to lose her composure. Alarm bells were really set off over Pam's focus on her dog's well-being. She kept asking if her dog was all right, and she didn't seem that distraught about Gregg's violent death. So 5 days after the murder, one day before what would have been Pam and Craig's first wedding anniversary, she called Bill Spencer of WMUR News and told him she'd like to give an interview.
Right. He's a newsman.
Yes.
He's not a cop.
And the police have told her, don't speak to the press.
Right. Don't speak to the media or anything.
Right. But she's not listening to that.
So, and Spencer was very surprised, not only for the request of the interview, but how composed and put together Pam Smart was.
Mm-hmm.
Just 5 days after her husband's brutal murder. He was also taken aback when she offered to bring out the top layer of her and Gregg's wedding cake for the dramatic effect in her interview.
Yeah, that's creepy. Very creepy.
That's weird. And we heard that in the opening scene.
Yeah.
And then she also gave some odd statements in the interview. The one that got me the best was, "This is the best time in Gregg's life for this to happen."
Yeah. So, wait a minute. What did she say that preceded that? Because I don't get it. How did she say that?
Well,
what was the rationale?
That it's better to die young, right? Only the good die young.
So it's better to die young than old and gray?
That's what she's
saying.
So
he died in his prime?
Yep.
That's weird, huh?
Well, and then more weird maybe is that she says, "Thank God Hale and the dog is okay."
Yeah, and I'm a dog lover, but that doesn't seem appropriate.
Well, I would hope if I was found dead on this flight of stairs or something in the foyer, the first question you would have wouldn't be how are the dogs?
How's the dog? And why are the speakers crooked?
Yeah.
The speakers aren't where I left them.
Yeah, what's going on?
Yeah, move the body out of my way so I can see the speakers and the dog.
But thank God the dog's okay. But the dog was okay because Pam told them to put it downstairs.
Right.
Otherwise, it would have been terribly traumatized by the gunshot to the owner's head.
Yeah, it would have had to go to therapy. It'd be on medication.
Yeah.
It'd be bad.
Right. So now things get more interesting. On May 14th, which is how many days?
Almost 2 weeks.
2 weeks or so. There's an anonymous phone call to the Derry Police Department.
Oh, yeah.
Which links Cecilia Pierce, you remember that's Pam's intern, to the murder case.
Yeah, her new best buddy.
Yeah. Female caller told police that Cecilia knew that Pamela Smart had planned Gregg's murder with 3 teenage boys.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think there's also, at this time, I mean, the police were already suspicious just by her actions.
Yes, I think so.
And certainly public opinion. I well remember this.
Do you?
She was a pariah.
Really? Right away?
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah. The overwhelming thought was that she was involved.
Yeah. Well, she was so cavalier on TV. It's so put together.
Yeah.
Yeah, really odd.
So nobody liked her.
No.
And then you get this anonymous tip that she was involved.
Right.
So off we go.
Right. And then it wasn't until Sunday, June 10th, that Vance Lattime Sr., so that's JR's dad, he brought in a snub-nosed .38 caliber revolver to the Seabrook Police Department. He was suspicious that the gun was used in Gregg Smart's murder. So Ralph Welch, that's where he comes in. He was another friend of JR's and of Ray Fowler's. And he had come to the police station also to say that he had knowledge of Gregg Smart's murder. So things are kind of falling apart here.
Yeah, well, you know, too many people know about it.
Yeah.
So.
And it's kind of the kind of thing, if nobody had talked, it may have never been solved.
Well, maybe.
Because people are talking.
People are talking.
Yeah.
What's the old story? 2 people can keep a secret if one of them is dead.
Never heard that, but I could see how that might be true.
I mean, you have way too many people with knowledge of the crime.
Yeah, a lot of people know. So J.R. Lattime's father, Vance, he had checked his gun, and he'd noticed that it had been recently cleaned, and he hadn't done that, so that made him suspicious. And I give him credit for going to the police. He could have tried to protect his son and tried to hide it, but he went right to the police like he should have.
Kudos to him.
Yeah. So during Welch's interview, Ralph Welch, he said that 3 friends had told him about their involvement in the murder. And he gave the friends names. They were Pete Randall, J.R. Lattime, and Ray Fowler. So those are the guys that were with Billy Flynn on the night that Gregg was killed.
Yep.
So on June 11th, the next day, Billy Flynn, Pete Randall, and J.R. Lattime were arrested. Flynn was arrested for first-degree murder. Pete Randall and J.R. Lattime were arrested as accomplices to the first-degree murder. So it was on June 13th that detectives convinced Cecilia Pierce to wear a body wire so they could listen in when she was talking to Pam, because she talked to Pam pretty often. And police had questioned her, and she'd kind of not exposed everything right away. She tried to not say anything. But then they did convince her to wear a body wire to keep herself out of trouble. And they ended up recording 7 tapes of conversations between Pam and Cecilia. And they also put wiretaps on Pam's phone at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the thought in the media was that Cecilia, after all this was said and done, she was really enjoying the publicity and did a lot of talking, but we can get to that later. But they had some interesting footage on that.
Yeah.
So in a conversation with Pam, Cecilia asked, "Seeing what happened, wouldn't you rather have divorced Gregg?" she asked. And Pam said, "Well, I don't know. Nothing was going wrong until they fucking told Ralph." So she's blaming it on Ralph.
Right.
But kind of in saying that, she's kind of letting the police know that she is guilty.
She certainly is.
It wasn't a very good thing for them to hear from her. Also, Cecilia was trying to lead her on and said, "Remember that time you let Bill use your car to go up to your house? If they hadn't forgotten the directions and got lost, they could have killed Gregg back then." And to that, Pam said, "I know." And then Pam joked with Cecilia about giving her a signal if she ended up wearing a wire so that Pam would know. So that was kind of a little ironic thing that happened.
Right.
And Cecilia gave her a hug, and she was worried that Pam might actually feel the mic on her, but she didn't. And she continued to get information for the police. quite a bit that was played in the courtroom, although some of it was really hard for them to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a wiretap in the early 90s.
Yeah.
They didn't work real well.
No.
But like you said, there was a lot of conversations, and there was enough that came through that was audible.
Yeah.
That really implicated Pam.
Yeah, I think these recordings, more than anything else, are what got Pam convicted.
So after all this, Pam's arrested for Gregg's murder on August 1st, 1990.
Okay.
Police arrived at Pam's office after lunch. Investigator Pelletier said, this is good cop language, I love it, I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is that we've solved your husband's murder. The bad news is you're under arrest.
Yeah.
I wonder how long he had to practice that.
I know, and he said it again and again in many documentaries. He's been quoted saying it, so, a lot of people here have ended up enjoying the attention.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So Pam's brought into the Derry Police Department jail, news cameras filming her entrance. Pam didn't speak to investigators beyond asking for her lawyer's card, which she had in her purse.
Mm-hmm.
Her trial was covered live by WMUR, a television station in New Hampshire, I think Manchester. Covered every day. First trial to be broadcast on court TV. The image of an attractive young widow suspected of her husband's murder was irresistible to the media and to the public.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, did you watch any of it?
No.
Yeah, you were working and stuff.
Not on purpose. I guess I would watch it in the news at night, but I wasn't home during the day watching.
Yeah, because there were some people that watched every bit of it. There were people lining up outside the courtroom to be there.
Well, yeah.
And then when that would be overflowed and there weren't any seats, they actually had rooms with TVs in them at the courthouse for people to sit and watch. So a lot of people were really obsessed with this trial.
It was.
Yeah.
It was a very celebrated case.
Yeah. And I guess it could have been that way with the Charles Stewart case, but he killed himself and never went to trial.
Right.
Because that might have ended up being a circus like that if he'd gone to trial.
I can imagine it would have been.
Yeah. So phrases like Ice Princess, Black Widow were used in the media to describe Pam. Her attorney's request for a change of venue was denied, and the jury was not sequestered. So it was a little bit shocking, surprising that they didn't allow a change of venue, because there was so much publicity out there. It was on TV all the time. Pam's interviews, because she wasn't shy.
Yeah, I think, though, they would have had to move it out of New England. Almost.
Yeah, almost, yeah. But the murder trial was really mostly about control. The question was whether Pam manipulated and controlled Billy Flynn and his friends to kill her husband. Pam admitted to having the sexual relationship with Billy, but she denied knowing of his plans to murder Gregg.
Yes.
So she claimed she was only pretending to know about it in her conversations with Cecilia so that she could get Cecilia to tell her what she knew, which didn't make a heck of a lot of sense.
That makes absolutely no sense.
But she said she did have the affair with Billy and she didn't want anyone to find out, so she was trying to hide that. So in the meantime, she was trying to find out who killed Gregg, and at first she didn't think that Billy could have done it. So she was trying to find out who the real killer was.
So she's doing her own investigation.
Yes.
Atta girl.
She claims that she went to Billy and asked him if he did it, and he denied it, and she believed him. And that's when she found out that Cecilia seemed to know things about it, and she was trying to get info out of Cecilia by pretending that she knew about it.
You know, how many times have you heard the murderers say, I'm going to spend the rest of my life dedicated to finding the murderer of my spouse?
Yeah.
You know, they always say that.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm not going to rest until I find out who did this.
Right.
I think
right.
O.J. started that, didn't he?
Well, I don't know if he started it, but he definitely did do it.
He did it.
And he never really looked at all, though.
No.
No.
But it sounds good.
Yeah, I guess you kind of have to say something like that in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, if Pam's trying to get information out of Cecilia, all she'd have to do is ask her.
Right.
I mean, she doesn't have to hide behind all the subterfuge.
Yeah. And if she had any information, why wouldn't she go to the police?
Right.
And if she really wanted to find out who did it, why wouldn't she say, yes, I'm sorry, I had an affair with this boy. And like she said, she broke up with him before that, like a few days before the murder.
Uh-huh.
So if you really did break up with someone a few days before the murder, why wouldn't you go to the police and say, I'm afraid he might have done something to my husband?
Yeah, why isn't that the first thing you say?
Right. But she definitely didn't.
Nope.
No. So Billy Flynn, he gave a really emotional testimony. He was crying, and he told jurors how he pulled the trigger, and the jury deliberated for 13 hours before they brought back a guilty verdict, and that was on March 22nd of 1991 on Pam. So before that, the boys had already taken plea deals in exchange for their testimony.
So they're going to go to prison, but they're going to testify against Pam.
Right. I think they got it downgraded from first degree to second degree for testifying against Pam.
Yeah.
So Judge Gregg was the judge, and he sentenced Pam to life without parole, and that was the mandatory punishment anyway in the state of New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
And the count was accomplice to first-degree murder. So Fowler, who was waiting in the getaway car with J.R. Lattime the night Gregg was killed, for failing to report the attempt or the plan of the murder, they said that he knew about it, and he was the one that cleaned the gun. He got 30 years in prison for that. So, whoa.
Yeah.
That seems like a lot.
Well, yeah, he participated in a murder.
Well, he says he didn't know they were planning a murder. He thought it was just a robbery.
Yeah, I'm just cleaning this gun.
Yeah. Right. Well, there's probably more to that.
Yeah.
But Billy Flynn and Pete Randall were tried as adults, and they turned state's evidence, and they each received 40 years. And then JR, he got 30 years. So they all got a lot of time.
They did.
Yeah. So on her appeals, Pam's attorneys have raised several issues. Now, one of them is that the pretrial publicity surrounding the case deprived her of having an impartial jury. So the jury wasn't sequestered. The news was everywhere about her. So what do you think of that? I think that could be a point.
Well, again, I don't know how far away you'd have to go to find a jury that hadn't heard of this.
Right.
So I think you take your mix of jurors, you do your voir dire and exclude some and keep some.
So you don't think they should have had a change of venue because it wouldn't make any difference?
I don't think it would have made any difference.
Okay. Also, what was brought up in her appeals is whether the trial court erred in denying the defense's motion to suppress tape recordings of the intercepted conversations between Pam and Cecilia.
Now, what basis did they have to want to exclude those from testimony?
I don't know. I think part of it was that they were hard to understand, so that some parts would be kind of mumbled out so they couldn't hear it, and then they'd hear a sentence, and maybe those sentences that they did hear would then be out of context.
Yeah, possibly.
Now, some of it, they had actually had the stenographer figure it out and type it up. But then most of that was ruled out that they couldn't do that. They had to listen and determine for themselves.
Yeah. And they all got to listen individually.
Well, they put headphones on, yep.
Right.
Yep.
So it wasn't everyone sitting there together listening to one recording. They were all listening to their individual recording.
Right.
Anyway, they didn't get to exclude that.
No, and it must have been pretty damning because a lot of the jurors said that was what really put it over the top for them.
She didn't come right out and say, I did it, or I'm behind it all, but it sure sounds like that's what she's saying.
Yeah, they aren't things you would say if you were innocent and didn't know anything about it.
Not at all.
No. There were also some questions of juror misconduct. There was one of the jurors who, each day after being in the courtroom, she would record her thoughts about things on a tape.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that?
I don't know. I guess that they felt that some of the things she was recording had to do with other things that she'd heard in the media, and she was kind of mixing it up in her discussions. You know, taking things she'd heard in the media and things from the court, which you shouldn't have anything from the media in your head. You're just supposed to only use the stuff you've heard in the courtroom.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you can also say that she's putting some thoughts down at the end of the day to be able to better remember them.
Right. Yeah. But then they had her thoughts on the HBO movie, and they were actually kind of in Pam's favor. So we'll talk about that in a couple minutes. I'm going to talk about that documentary.
Okay.
But anyway, to support Pam's claim that the media's impact on the jury was overwhelming, the defense submitted an audio tape recording that was made by the juror. So this is the juror I was talking about, when she was recording her daily impressions of the trial. And there were actually negative views of the press in the recording. But this backfired because the recordings revealed the juror to be objective and the jury's deliberations to be fair. So I guess what I can get from that is that the recordings, the defense was trying to say that the negative impressions of the press that the juror recorded would have been something to cause a new trial because she was getting these impressions of the press.
Boy, that's a stretch.
But then the judge actually said that her recordings revealed that she was actually being very objective and deliberating, and she wasn't against Pam. She actually was thinking things through very objectively.
Okay.
So Pam's case brought to the forefront the phenomenon of women who kill. Now, compared with men, women commit very little crime. Women offenders differ from male offenders in their patterns and also in their motivations. When a woman commits a crime, it's usually a minor property offense. So the crimes committed by women are primarily shoplifting and welfare fraud. Women rarely commit violent crimes, but when they do, it's usually an assault or a murder. But I don't know what other violent crime there is, I guess.
Yeah.
Rape or torture or something.
Imprisonment, kidnapping.
Yeah, that's true. But most women who commit homicide fall into these two basic groups. There are the younger women who actually usually kill their children. And then there are the older women who end up killing their abusive spouse. So these are the two major homicide categories for women.
And Pam doesn't fit into either of those.
No, but she's a typical female murderer because she perpetuated the violence in her own home. But she's not fitting into that category because she didn't kill an abusive spouse.
Right.
So her motive was pretty unusual. It was rare. And what psychologists have said after reviewing the case is that it seems like she just killed for convenience and maybe for some money.
Yeah, I was going to say, what would her motive be? And she certainly wasn't going to kill him or have him killed so she could spend the rest of her life with her 16-year-old lover.
I don't think so. I don't think
that
she was
wasn't
really
in
in
her
love
plans.
with him. No.
I mean, she wanted to be a TV star or a media star.
Yeah, and I think maybe she didn't want the divorce. Maybe she thought a divorce would look bad.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
But murder looks a lot worse.
Well, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think it was her intention not to be caught with the murder and be an innocent widow.
It'd be better.
But yeah, divorce is always better. People who think murder's better are just...
Yeah, and then she did get a little bit of money, but he didn't have a huge life insurance policy.
No.
And these were young kids, the husband and wife, so they hadn't saved a lot of money. So there wasn't a big payoff by killing him.
No, not huge. No. I think she got like $100,000, which is a lot when you're 22 in 1990, but it's not a fortune. It doesn't set you up for life.
It certainly doesn't.
So it was probably just to get out of the marriage. What she had told Cecilia, according to Cecilia, was that she couldn't divorce him because she wouldn't get the dog or the furniture. And that he would bother her, not leave her alone.
Yeah, that's the reason. Now, the dog was hers to begin with, so...
Yeah, but he bought the dog for her.
Yeah, so...
I don't know. This is what she told the kids, why she couldn't divorce him. So she seemed like she was a bit materialistic. A bit shallow.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
All right.
So the media coverage of Gregg Smart's murder was exceptionally rare. Experts have attributed the out-of-control publicity to the local daily coverage by WMUR and by the court TV airing of the trial. So being labeled as the Ice Princess or the Black Widow is identified by Pam's supporters as very unfair portrayals. And Pam has said, "I feel very different from the media's portrayal of me. I am not a cold, uncaring individual."
She sure sounds cold. Anyway.
Well, she sounds cold, and she appeared cold on the television.
So she served the first couple years of her sentence in a New Hampshire prison.
Right, yep.
And then she's transferred to Bedford Hills Correctional Facility in New York State.
Yeah, and she said that came out of nowhere with no warning. They just came in and took her one day.
Yeah, Pam has alleged that she was moved to make it harder for her to work with her lawyers on her appeal or to be visited by her parents.
Uh-huh.
Others connected with the prison have said that she was a disruptive influence and was manipulating other inmates. Now, she spends her time now tutoring other inmates. She's earned a master's degree in the science of law and a master of arts from Mercy College.
Right. So, at least she's getting an education there.
That's right.
And she probably doesn't have student loan payments like the rest of us.
Nope, tuition was paid.
Right, right. So the HBO documentary I was talking about, Captivated, that's the one that they were not really saying she was innocent, but it was a portrayal of how the media might have treated her wrong or...
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was correct. It wasn't to prove her innocence or anything like that. It was just to show how slanted the coverage was.
Mm-hmm. Like she might not have got a fair trial.
To suggest that she didn't have a fair trial.
Right, right. And in that, Ray Fowler had just finished his parole in 2013. So he was interviewed for the first time in that documentary. And what Pam had said before he was interviewed is that once his parole was over, he would come out and say that she was not involved at all and he didn't think she had anything to do with the murder. But actually he did not say that. So he told the interviewers about the first attempt to kill Gregg and how Pam had given Billy the car that day to drive. And when Billy didn't go through with killing Gregg, she was really angry. She'd gotten in the car with him and Billy and yelled at Billy about why he didn't go through with it and threatened to break up with him because he had killed her husband.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Fowler didn't really like Pam anyway, did he?
No, no. And I don't think that most of them really knew her very well. I think it was mostly Billy and Cecilia that she spent a lot of time with. Yeah. I don't think the other boys spent that much time with her.
No. They didn't.
No.
They just, they hung out with Billy.
Right.
Who hung out with Pam, but they were on the periphery.
Yes, that's right.
So you want some other updates?
Yeah, definitely. What you got?
So I'll try to do this chronologically.
Okay.
We'll see how that works.
Okay.
So in October of 1996, so what are we, 6 years into her sentence?
Yeah, 5 or 6, yeah.
And she's in Bedford Hills Correctional Facility.
Right.
She was severely beaten by inmates, Graves and Miller, which resulted in a metal plate being placed in the left side of her face. So I guess they fractured her cheekbone.
Yeah.
The 2 inmates beat her after accusing her of snitching on them about their prison relationship.
Huh.
So they got convicted of second-degree assault, and they are transferred to separate prisons. Now, ever since the beating, Pam has taken medication for chronic pain and says she sometimes thinks of suicide. Her counselor, Dr. Eleanor Pam, says that she has many, many, many dark days.
Huh.
Pamela says she still keeps track of Flynn because she regards him as being key to her freedom. According to her, he is one of the few people that could actually get me out of here by coming forward and telling the truth, but he's never going to do that.
No.
Well, why would he? If the truth is that he did it on his own and she's innocent,
yeah,
he's not ever going to say that.
Well, that's true. But how likely is that anyway?
It's not likely.
Yeah. So do you have information about when he was released or anything?
Well, I'm getting to that.
Okay.
I said we're doing this chronologically.
No hurry.
So then we next have something in 2003.
Okay.
Where we got photos of a scantily clad Smart were published in the National Enquirer, one of the nation's finer newspapers.
So who did that? Was it a guard? I know somebody in the prison system.
Well, she filed a complaint.
Okay.
She was claiming that the photos were taken by a prison guard who had raped her. That lawsuit was dismissed. But a year later, in 2004, Smart and fellow inmate Carolyn Warmus sued the officials at Bedford Hills claiming sexual harassment and sexual assault, who they said coerced them into posing for the suggestive photos published in the National Enquirer.
What year was that?
2004.
Oh, okay.
And then in 2009, a U.S. District Court judge approved a $23,000 payment to Smart from the state of New York.
Approved it?
Approved it. So it doesn't say whether they found the state guilty or not, but they paid her money.
They made a payment, yeah.
Right.
Okay. So she said it was more than one guard that did this?
No.
Oh, just one guard?
It was one guard, Smart, and another inmate.
So did this guard get fired?
Doesn't say.
Okay. Huh. Yeah, I saw those pictures on the documentary.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were pretty much, in her underwear. Kind of. They posed it kind of like the ones that she'd given Billy. I don't know if you've seen those. But they have pictures posted of some pictures that she gave Billy Flynn. It's a pretty well-known picture of her in like a white bikini.
Right.
Kind of kneeling on a bed and holding her hair up.
Yeah.
And they were similar pictures to that. So they weren't actually pornographic, but they were suggestive and demeaning if this was something she didn't want. Yeah.
If it was something she didn't want.
Right, right.
Okay, then we'll jump up to 2015.
Oh, it's a big jump. Okay.
It is. Not much else going on here.
Okay.
Billy Flynn has a short parole hearing. He was granted parole with a release date no earlier than June, and that's when he got released, June of 2015.
Right.
Billy says, "I will always feel terrible at what happened 25 years ago. Nothing I can say will be of comfort, but I hope this will be the last time Gregg Smart's family will be publicly reminded of their grief."
Huh.
That's kind of an idiotic statement.
Well, I don't know. I think it's okay. What's wrong with that statement? There's not a lot he can say that's going to make him likable.
Not in the least.
So at least it wasn't, poor me, something like that some people would say.
Then the next month, April of 2015, a few days before the parole hearing for Pete Randall, Pamela Smart's spokesperson said, quote, "We believe that Pete Randall, who Pamela Smart had never met and therefore could not have been manipulated, was the actual shooter." So here's a new story.
Okay. So Pam's people said this.
Pam's people said this.
When he was getting his parole hearing?
Right.
Huh,
So,
that's weird.
But this assertion had no effect on the result of the hearing. And Randall was granted parole in April, and also with the June of 2015 release date.
Okay.
So both
So they got out
Flynn
the
and
same time.
Randall got out the same time.
Okay. All right. Anything else come up lately?
Oh, let's see. Pamela Smart filed a lawsuit in November of 2014 against Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, saying she's innocent. Now, before you get all excited, it's not that she's innocent of murder,
Oh.
but innocent of weapons possession and contraband charges for a non-serrated cake instrument that she'd had for 17 years for cutting cake.
While in prison.
While in prison.
Okay.
And then in December of 2016, Vince Lattimy's father, the owner of the revolver, has been trying to get it back, but all these years it's been sitting in the evidence room, and the state wants to keep it just in case some of Pam's legal maneuvering results in a retrial.
See, now that's interesting, because if someone goes to prison and they had something that is your property in their possession that might be evidence later, you might never get that back.
Right?
That doesn't seem fair.
It doesn't.
No.
And he's still waiting for it.
Yeah. Which I don't care if he doesn't get his gun, but it could be like a car or something that someone needs.
Why can't he buy himself a new gun? Or why can't his son buy him a gun?
Well, I'm not feeling sorry for him because he doesn't have the gun. I'm just saying in general, by principle, that doesn't seem fair. If it wasn't a gun, if it was something else.
It doesn't. I mean,
he should probably get his stuff back.
You should get your evidence back.
Right.
The trial's over.
Yeah. I mean, the person who's been convicted should have to pay him for it or something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they don't make much money. I think she makes like $4 a week or something crazy, but...
Stamping license plates?
No, teaching. You said she's teaching, right?
Yes.
And I actually saw an interview with her academic advisor from the jail, from the prison.
Yeah.
She thinks Pam's just wonderful. She says, she's the best student I've ever had.
Well, we said that.
Yeah.
I mean, we go way back to high school and college and how intelligent she was.
Right.
Not smart enough, though.
No, but maybe overly ambitious and psychopath. Crazy.
Yeah, maybe that latter part.
Yeah. I mean, being smart certainly doesn't make you a good person. We know that.
No, it doesn't.
No. Okay. Well, I'm going to do a couple 5-star reviews. I didn't do them at the beginning because I wanted to do more than the usual 2, and I thought that way people can just stop listening if they don't want to hear them.
Well, but I want to hear them.
Yeah, you'll stay around for them. So I just wanted to read a few of them. And we have some people that have been sending them in an email because they don't listen on iTunes, but they're still getting entered into the snifter contest. So I'm just going to read a few of those. So we have one from Megan, and it says, I would love to win the snifter from you guys. You both are the best. I absolutely love listening to you. Very relaxed, laid back, and such a compliment to each other. I'm on Android, so I can't leave a review on iTunes, but I do tell everyone I know to listen, and you're on my list to share in various true crime groups on Facebook. Thanks for such a great job. So thank you, Megan, and welcome to the brewery, Megan.
Nice review, Megan. Thanks.
Yeah. And then we have Awesome, Love Jill and Dick. And this is from Nahid N. I'm a true crime junkie, so I consider myself somewhat of an expert. Jill and Dick have great chemistry, hence it makes for a good listen. I'm definitely hooked. Keep up the good work, you guys.
Thank you.
So Nahid N, welcome to the brewery. And then I'll just do one more, because I know we get sick of praising ourselves on the air here. So this one is Best Podcast Team by Ron120932. Great podcast. They got awesome podcast voices, good audio. Love the good cop, bad cop explanation of cases. Dick makes me want to try every beer he reviews so beautifully. Keep up the great work. I will be donating to keep this podcast going. So, Ron, welcome to the brewery.
Good one, Ron.
Yeah. And speaking of beers, Dick's going to put together a list of the beers he's reviewed, and I'm going to post it on Facebook. So if anybody wants to know what beers have been reviewed so you can drink them, then that'll be available in a couple days. We'll get that on there.
Yeah. I can't remember them all.
Well, you can look them up.
Off the top of my head, but sure. I know how to look them up.
Right. Okay. And what else? We still have the snifter contest.
We got 4 more days of snifter contest, or 3 more days.
Yep.
So
we'll have to look over the reviews and pick somebody.
But the ones I've read so far, it's going to make it tough to pick a winner.
It sure is, yeah.
Maybe we should just give snifters to everybody.
I wish we could, honestly. But that would be expensive.
It would.
Yeah. It's really hard to pick one person, but we'll do it.
We will.
Yeah.
And then we'll probably have some more contests down the road.
Oh, sure, we will. This one's been fun so far.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you have any comments, suggestions, you can always send us an email at truecrimebrewery@tiegrabber.com. And please follow us on Facebook. You can just go to tiegrabber.com/Facebook, and that'll take you to our page where you can like us or like some posts, make some comments maybe. Also, we're on Twitter. If you wouldn't mind following us, we're at Tiegrabber Pods, and we'd love to get some more followers on Twitter. We are also on Instagram, Tiegrabber Podcast, so give us a follow there too. If you're on Instagram, we'd love to hear from you and see your photos too. True Crime Brewery is always available on iTunes, and it's also available on Stitcher and Google Play. And this has been part 1 of our Killer Wives series. And,
who are we doing next?
I don't know. I'm not going to say. I've got a couple in mind, but I'm not going to say.
We got a couple more to do.
Yeah, as soon as I know, I'll put it up on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram so people will know.
Okay.
Okay. So until then, take care, everybody.
Good night.
Bye-bye.